I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator Mazie Hirono discussed a bill on Asian Pacific Americans on the Senate floor Thursday. The legislation would create a commission for, quote, the creation of a national museum of Asian Pacific American history and culture. Hirono hopes the creation of this museum will combat the wave of hate crimes against Asian Americans since the start of the pandemic. Here's more from the Hawaii Democrat.
Thank the Majority Leader for his words and his very strong support of the Asian American Pacific Islander community and his support for this bill that I am calling forth today. As we celebrate Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, we have an opportunity to pass meaningful legislation to establish a commission to study the creation of a National Museum of Asian Pacific American history and culture. This bill is straightforward. It establishes an 8-person commission appointed equally by House and Senate majority and minority leadership. The commission will be composed of individuals with expertise in the research, study, and promotion of Asian American Pacific Islander history. And this commission will submit a report to Congress, at which point we should act. Asian and Pacific Islander American communities have made significant contributions to American life. But despite these undeniable contributions, our communities have largely been excluded or erased from American history. If not invisible, API groups are often pejoratively depicted as foreigners, always the other, instead of people who have lived in and positively contributed to this country for generations. These narratives have fueled xenophobia and racism, contributing to decades of racist laws and discrimination. And of course, most recently, led to the rise in attacks and hate-related incidents against members of our communities. A National Museum of Asian Pacific American history and culture would help combat these harmful narratives by sharing API history on an unprecedented scale, and we should consider whether or not such a museum should be feasible. And with this bill, we can demonstrate our commitment to showcasing the significant contributions of the API community to our country's fabric. I think it's really important for our country to better understand how the Chinese Exclusion Act, Executive Order 9066, which led to the incarceration of 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II, and decades of racial laws contribute to the API experience today. The establishment of this kind of museum should not be controversial, and it has been done before with regard to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of American Latinos. These museums represent progress. They help us better understand one another and of our shared history as Americans. Now we have a chance to build on this progress by creating a commission to study a similar museum to highlight the history and legacies of the API individuals and communities in this country. And of course, this bill represents a significant step towards an America that celebrates and encourages the rich diversity of our people. With that, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources be discharged from further consideration of H.R. 3525 and that the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
H.R. 3525, an act to establish the commission to study the potential creation of a National Museum of Asian Pacific American history and culture and for other purposes.
Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection? Seeing none, so ordered.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 300 S2490.
The clerk will report.